It's Friday, August 28th, 2020. Welcome back to the Nerd National Communication Center. I'm Mike, and it's time for the electric vehicle news. So, in this edition, what do people want in an electric vehicle? And looking at the run-up to Tesla's Battery Day. First up in today's EV news is an article over at Inside EVs talking about what people want to spur adoption of electric vehicles. And Castrol, which is owned by British Petroleum, actually did a study, and the bottom line is what I have always thought for cars is a price similar to what you're paying for an ICE vehicle, being able to charge in 30 minutes or less, and the golden magical 300 miles of range for all vehicles, not 150 or 230, but actually 300 miles range. So I thought I would look at the range and charging rate of some upcoming vehicles. So I hunted down some information on these recent vehicles. So the Nissan Ariya looks like it's not going to hit the United States until late 2021 and cost about $40,000. So $33,000, $34,000, $35,000 after the tax credit. And if I scroll on down, we'll see it has two options of batteries, a 65 kilowatt hour and a 90 kilowatt hour battery. But as I keep going, let's find that charging rate. So we're talking about 130 kilowatt charging rate at fast charging. So peak charging rate of 130. So to me, over 100, 150 would be wonderful. I own a Chevrolet Bolt, which has a rather low charging rate by newer car standards. It peaks out at about 50, 55 kilowatts, so you can add about 90 miles of range in 30 minutes, and I'd much rather be adding almost 200 miles in 30 minutes. So it would make traveling more convenient. You know, you can get one charging stop during lunch and do an extended charging stop for 40 minutes and not really lose time on the road. But if you're driving further than that, then you are going to be losing some time on a charging stop. So the Ariya is looking at a peak charging rate of about 130. The larger of the batteries will give it the range of over 300 miles. So check for the Ariya. So not a lot of good details are out yet on the Hyundai Ioniq brand that we will not see probably for a couple years yet. But if I do scroll down, they are talking about it having a 800 volt charging system and charging rates up to 350 kilowatt. Now I'm sure they'll have a battery option that will get you 300 miles. It may or may not be standard, and I do not know what the cost will be when we see this vehicle. But to see these kind of charging rates coming out in newer vehicles, this is going to set the standard. It's going to be less and less of a problem for quick charging. So we'll also put a check mark with the Hyundai Ioniq line. So Lucid Air is talking about charging 300 miles in 20 minutes with charging rates up to 300 kilowatts. So check. And if you can charge 300 miles in 20 minutes, then you must have a 300 mile range. So Lucid Air is going to meet this criteria. Now, the question is, what is the cost going to be on this car, and will it ever be more than vaporware? Will it really come out? All right, so I'm going to take a little break from that for a second and talk about Wham, Baam, Teslacam. So it's got some interesting and entertaining videos on their channel. You might want to go check them out. But let me just play a few seconds of this one.
In this episode of Teslacam Stories.
Yes, sir. Reading you loud and clear. Clear. The clock is...
So there we have it. If you need a humor break, if you need some entertainment, you can go check out this channel. All right, now, meanwhile, let's go back to looking at charging rates of upcoming vehicles. So there's not a lot of details on the VW ID.4 electric vehicle. I did run into another article where they talked about their placing it against like the RAV4 and other crossover SUV electric vehicles as opposed to trying to go directly up against the Tesla Model Y. But there's not a lot of details in this article about what it will do. Say it can cover over 500 kilometers and it's low drag, but I did a little bit more searching. And while I was searching, I thought I would look at what is the charging rate of the Volkswagen ID.3. So we've got the ID.3 and the ID.4. So if I scroll down here and look at the ID.3, the ID.3 is similar in appearance and style and range and all that to the Chevrolet Bolt, the current Chevrolet Bolt. But if I come down here and look at the charging rate, it says if you're charging from a 50 kilowatt charger or a 150 watt charger, the time is the same. So that's a little curious, but if you look right here, the maximum charging rate for the ID.3, maximum DC fast charge rate is 50 kilowatts. So that's the ID.3 as it is designed now is a fail with its fast charging rate. Okay. Now, I did more hunting to try to get some stuff on the ID.4, and I found something over at evdatabase.org. And if I scroll down here, we're looking at a 77 kilowatt battery, 420 kilowatt range. And if I keep hunting down here, I probably just scrolled right by it. Let me pause for a second and find this. Here I am. It's pretty respectable charge rate. Fast charge rate 125 kilowatts DC. So the newer vehicles that are being designed today and will be coming out in the next couple years, I think will all have at least 100 kilowatt fast charge rate where you're looking at adding 150 to 180, almost 200 miles in 30 minutes. So check on the ID.4. The question is, what's the price going to be? But since the ID.4 is looking to compete against gasoline vehicles in the same price range, I think it will be less than $40,000. So upcoming vehicles all seem to be meeting this demand, this criteria. 300-mile range, over 100 kilowatts charging rate, and cost is comparable to an ICE vehicle. All right, so I'm going to move on to some other subjects. Ran across this article at Electrotech talking about Tesla installing the world's biggest casting machine. So basically right now, like on the Model 3, the rear structure of the vehicle is made out of many parts. And this casting machine is going to be able to cast this all in one part, which should reduce the cost of manufacturing the vehicle. If you watched Sandy Munro's videos on the Model Y teardown, the rear structure of the Model Y was cast in two parts, vastly reducing the 70 pieces of metal that had to be assembled and welded or bolted together. So right now, the Model Y is two pieces of metal, and eventually it will be a single piece of metal because Tesla is building this carport to hold the casting machine. Now, don't laugh because they built two assembly lines in tents and they're highly successful. So I think Tesla is getting the hang of manufacturing and trying to make things more efficient. And in the long run, by investing in this super expensive casting machine, they are going to be saving money and driving down the cost of their vehicles. So also over at Electric Tech, it would not be an EV news, or at least a stellar, outstanding EV news, if we didn't have Elon Musk gushing over full self-driving. So evidently they've been rewriting the code again. So as a software engineer, I have some understanding of what's involved in trying to write self-driving, and evidently they have gone down some blind alleys that have led to dead ends in trying to get to full self-driving, and they've had to re-engineer the code and rewrite it several times. So the next rewrite is coming out in 6 to 12 weeks, and Elon Musk already says that he's using the alpha version and it is much better, and it might be released to the early adopters in 2 or 3 months. I'll let you read the article. It's if we ever get self-driving, it will be a wonderful thing. I hope we do. But if I end up buying a Tesla Model Y in a couple years when I have to replace my wife's vehicle, I think I'll hold off buying the self-driving, the full self-driving, until it is completely proven, even if that costs me a couple thousand extra. Very briefly here, Electrotech has an article talking about the speculation on the redesign of the Model 3 frunk. It's different. It's slightly smaller. Why could this be? Has Tesla installed a flux capacitor or making room for one? Or could they be switching the Model 3s over to a heat pump instead of electric resistive heating? We don't know why, but the latest Model 3s have a slightly smaller frunk. Check it out at Electrotech and let me know if you get to the bottom of this deep, enigmatic mystery. So we are getting close to Tesla's Battery Day presentation, which is supposed to be September 22nd, and Tesla and Elon Musk are hinting at some huge announcements. So there's a lot of hype building up around this, and Elon Musk is teasing about a huge jump in energy density up to 400 watt hours per kilogram on the battery, and that is allegedly the density we need to make viable electric powered aircraft. But of course, going from where we are now, 200 to 260 watt hours per kilogram to 400 is basically going to double the density of the batteries, so the batteries could be half the size, half the weight, and have the same range, or you could add 20% range and get from 250 miles to 300 miles, but not have to do a big increase in the weight of the battery. In fact, the weight of the vehicle would drop, thereby making it more efficient. So we'll see what is going to happen with this battery day. They've also hinted and kicked around the term million-mile battery. So we're talking about a battery that could go thousands of charging cycles. And they already say they're putting electric motors and other components in their cars that are rated for that kind of endurance. So that could really change how often we buy vehicles. And instead of expecting that we're always spending $300 or $400 a month on a vehicle, we could have a vehicle that's paid off and we're getting over-the-air updates to keep it refreshed and feeling modern and new, but not always having to turn around and buy that new vehicle or do that new lease every 3 or 4 years. So we're going to be watching this as we roll closer and closer to Battery Day, and I'll make sure I have good coverage of the Tesla Battery Day. And talking about what I just said, at Electrotech, there is an article where Elon Musk is talking about batteries that will enable electric aircraft. And that's great, but you got to realize that these improved batteries are going to dramatically help EVs as well. As I start to wind down on this report of the electric vehicle news, came across this one from Tesla Roddy talking about Ford may be having a battery problem, and that is because LG Chem has filed a lawsuit against SK Innovation, and I believe SK Innovation is the company making the batteries for Ford and for the anticipated Ford F-150 electric pickup truck. So let me read this quote right here. Last year, a dispute between two Korean battery makers came to a head when LG Chem sued its smaller rival SK Innovation in the U.S. for poaching its skilled employees and stealing trade secrets. The ITC has ruled clearly in favor of LG Chem. So I believe ITC stands for the International Trade Commission. And this could have some serious ramifications because other electric car companies could be affected as well. So, of course, it seems to me the two biggest makers of batteries for electric vehicles are LG Chem and Tesla. All right, last article. So I don't know if you followed it on YouTube, but Sandy Munro has a channel, and he did a day-by-day series of videos on the teardown and disassembly of an early Tesla Model Y. It was very interesting, and I do recommend you go look his channel up and watch it. But there have been some accusations that basically his company or he is in the pocket of Tesla, because he said some very flattering things about the Tesla Model Y. But you got to remember, if you go back to when they did the teardown of the Model 3, he said some things that were not nearly as nice. He has refuted those claims against him in a video just recently. So I recommend you go over to his YouTube channel and watch the video. It's like 5 minutes. And that is going to wrap it up for this week's EV News. And I'll be back at it in about 2 weeks. Take care. As an end note to today's video, Houston dodged a major bullet about 2 days ago. In the early hours of Thursday the 27th, basically a Category 5 hurricane went about 100 miles to the east of us. It was amazing how compact the storm was to the west. Only hurricane force winds were only 25 or 30 miles to the west. It did not even rain in Houston, and for that I am grateful. However, there were many people in the path of that hurricane who took severe damage. So if you would, consider donating to a reputable charity of your choice. Thanks a lot.